For 3,000 years, the Vorthan Empire had swept across the galaxy like a plague of steel and fire. Entire civilizations fell before their unstoppable war machine. The peaceful Calorians, reduced to ash in mere days. The mighty Zephyrian Defense Corps, shattered despite their legendary shields. The cunning Nexari, outwitted and obliterated. Each conquest added to the Empire's growing legend of invincibility. The galaxy had learned to fear the sight of crimson Vorthan warships emerging from hyperspace. When their distinctive energy signatures appeared on long-range sensors, entire star systems would surrender without firing a single shot. Those foolish enough to resist were made examples of, their worlds glassed from orbit, their populations enslaved or exterminated. But in a small, unremarkable spiral arm of the galaxy, on a blue-green world called Earth, something unprecedented was stirring. The humans, a species the Vorthan databases dismissed as primitive mammals, technological development, minimal threat, were about to teach the galaxy's greatest predators what it truly meant to be hunted. The Vorthans had never encountered anything like humanity's concept of total war. They were about to learn that when you threaten everything a human holds dear, you don't just wake a sleeping giant. You unleash something far more dangerous. A species that has spent its entire evolutionary history turning survival into an art form. The war that was coming would not be recorded in Vorthan victory archives. Instead, it would become legend among the free peoples of the galaxy. The story of how the unstoppable Empire finally met something that refused to be stopped. Admiral Sarah Chun stood before the massive view screen of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical display update in real time. Red dots representing the Vorthan invasion fleet hung in space like drops of blood against the star field. 300 ships, each one capable of reducing a planet to molten slag. The same force that had conquered 17 star systems in the past 2 years without losing a single vessel. Admiral, we're receiving surrender demands from the Vorthan flagship, reported Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the communication station. They're giving us 10 minutes to stand down and prepare for occupation processing. Chen's weathered face remained impassive. At 52, she had spent 30 years in Earth's Navy, rising through the ranks during humanity's rapid expansion into space. She had studied every recorded engagement with the Vorthans, analyzed their tactics, dissected their technology. What she had learned both terrified and excited her. "Send our response," she said quietly. "Mom." Rodriguez looked confused. "Tell them." Chen paused, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Tell them that humanity declines their generous offer." And Lieutenant Commander, "Yes, Admiral." "Add that we have a counter-proposal of our own." The bridge fell silent except for the ambient hum of the ship's systems. Chen's staff exchanged glances. They were outnumbered 3-1, facing an enemy that had never known defeat. Yet their admiral seemed almost pleased. Captain Marcus Webb, Chen's old friend and the Defiance's commanding officer, stepped closer to her command chair. "Sarah, I hope you know what you're doing. Our intelligence reports suggest their shields can withstand anything in our arsenal." Chen nodded slowly. "Marcus, remember what I told you about assumptions? The Vorthans have been winning for so long. They've forgotten what it means to face real opposition. They expect us to behave like every other species they've conquered, afraid, desperate, predictable." She turned to face her tactical officer. "Commander Harrison, status on the Prometheus package." Harrison's fingers flew over his console. "All systems green, Admiral. The entire fleet is synchronized and ready for deployment." "Excellent." Chun stood and walked to the center of the bridge. Through the view screen, the Vorthan fleet maintained its intimidating formation, their massive dreadnoughts gleaming with the dark metal that made them nearly immune to energy weapons. "Nearly, Admiral," Rodriguez called out, tension in his voice. "The Vorthans are moving. Looks like they're tired of waiting for our answer." Chun watched as the enemy fleet began to advance in their classic pattern, a broad formation designed to maximize firepower while protecting their command ship. It was the same tactic they had used successfully for 3 millennia. Overwhelming force, applied with mathematical precision. They're following Doctrine 7, observed Harrison. Textbook portant à sa formation. Of course they are, Chen replied. When something works perfectly for 3,000 years, why change it? Open a channel to all ships. The communications array activated, connecting her to every human vessel in the fleet. 100 ships, ranging from massive battlecruisers to sleek destroyers, all crewed by humans who had volunteered for what many considered a suicide mission. This is Admiral Chun to all vessels. You know why we're here. 12 days ago, the Vorthan Empire issued an ultimatum to Earth. Surrender unconditionally, or face the same fate as the Calorians. They gave us their terms, our technology, our resources, our freedom, all in exchange for the privilege of serving their empire's slaves. She paused, letting her words sink in across the fleet. In ships throughout her formation, human crews prepared for battle with the galaxy's most feared enemy. The governments of Earth spent exactly 37 minutes considering their offer before voting unanimously to reject it. Not because we're reckless, not because we don't understand the odds, but because we know something the Vorthans have never learned. Some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible. Through the tactical display, she could see the Vorthan fleet closing distance. Their weapons were charging, preparing for the overwhelming first strike that had crushed so many others. The Vorthans believe they understand warfare. They think that superior numbers and advanced technology automatically equal victory. They've become so accustomed to quick surrenders and easy conquest that they've forgotten one crucial detail. They've never faced an enemy that refused to lose. The range counter ticked down steadily. Soon, the battle would begin. Today, we're going to remind the galaxy of something it seems to have forgotten. Humans didn't climb to the top of the food chain on Earth by being the biggest or the strongest. We got there by being too stubborn to know when we were beaten, too clever to fight fair, and too determined to ever give up. Chen's voice hardened, carrying across space to every human ship. The Vorthans want a war? They're about to discover what happens when they pick a fight with a species that has been at war with everything, including each other, for our entire existence. All ships prepare for Operation Prometheus. The Vorthan fleet was now within maximum weapons range. Their formation was perfect, their approach textbook, their confidence absolute. Everything they had learned about successful conquest told them that the small human fleet would either surrender or be quickly eliminated. Commander Harrison's voice cut through the tension. Admiral, we're receiving targeting locks from multiple Vorthan vessels. They're preparing to fire. Let them, Chen replied calmly. Launch all recon drones. I want detailed scans of their shield frequencies, power distribution, and command protocols. And Harrison? Yes, ma'am. Activate the Prometheus Directive. Authorization Chun Alpha 779. Harrison's console lit up as restricted systems came online. Throughout the human fleet, similar activations were occurring. Technology that had been developed in secret, tested in hidden facilities, and deployed without the knowledge of Earth's own government was finally being revealed. Admiral, Rodriguez reported, the Vorthans are hailing us again. They seem confused by our behavior. They're demanding to know why we haven't surrendered. Chen smiled grimly. Tell them they're about to find out. All ships implement formation chaos. Execute immediately. What happened next would have been incomprehensible to any military strategist in the galaxy. Instead of maintaining formation or attempting to match the Vorthan advance, the human fleet suddenly scattered in what appeared to be random directions. Ships accelerated wildly, some diving below the plane of engagement, others climbing above it, still others performing seemingly suicidal charges directly toward the enemy. To Vorthan observers, it looked like panic. Their tactical computers analyzed the human movements and concluded that the enemy fleet was attempting an unorganized retreat. It was exactly what Shin had intended. Admiral, Webb whispered urgently, the Vorthans are taking the bait. They're breaking formation to pursue individual targets. Perfect. Marcus, remind me to commend whoever came up with the idea to study pack hunting behaviors. Sometimes the best military tactics come from watching wolves chase deer. The Vorthen fleet, confident in their individual ship superiority, split into hunting groups to pursue what they believed were fleeing human vessels. Their formation, so perfect for coordinated assault, dissolved as commanders sought individual glory by capturing human ships. Shin watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the difficult part. Commander Harrison, begin Phase 2. Signal all ships. Prometheus is now active. Across the human fleet, a transformation began. Ships that had appeared to be running in panic suddenly revealed their true purpose. Hidden weapon systems activated, concealed sensor arrays deployed, and, most importantly, the Prometheus drive engaged. The Prometheus drive was humanity's greatest secret, a propulsion system that didn't just move ships faster, but allowed them to move in ways that violated everything the galaxy understood about space combat. While conventional ships were limited to relatively predictable vectors and acceleration curves, human vessels with the Prometheus drive could change direction instantly, stop on demand, and even briefly reverse their momentum. The first Vorthen ship to discover this found itself pursuing a human destroyer that suddenly stopped, spun around, and accelerated back toward its pursuer at impossible speed. The destroyer's weapons, designed specifically to penetrate Vorthen shields at close range, struck before the enemy could react. The Vorthen ship's shields held but barely. Damage reports flooded their bridge as systems overloaded from the unexpected energy discharge. Impossible, muttered Captain Vextar of the Vorthen cruiser Bloodclaw. No species has technology capable of such maneuvers. His tactical officer looked up from his console, for eyes wide with confusion. Sir, the humans appear to have weapons specifically designed to counter our shielding. And their movement patterns, our computers can't predict their next actions. Similar scenes played out across the battlefield as human ships revealed capability after capability that shouldn't have existed. Weapons that fired energy specifically tuned to disrupt Vorthen shield harmonics. Sensors that could track Vorthen vessels, even when cloaked. And, most disturbing of all, tactics that seemed to anticipate every Vorthen response. Shin watched with grim satisfaction as her plan unfolded. Phase 3, Commander Harrison. Signal Wolf Pack 7. Deep in the apparent chaos of the battle, a group of human ships that had been seemingly fleeing in terror suddenly reversed course. Led by Captain Maria Santos in the destroyer Venganza, they moved with coordinated precision toward the Vorthen flagship. Santos had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment of the mission, penetrating the defensive screen around the Vorthen command ship and delivering a message that couldn't be transmitted electronically. Venganza to Prometheus leader, Santos reported calmly as her ship dodged incoming fire. Package delivery run is go. We'll have you in position in 90 seconds. Shin nodded to herself. Everything depended on the next few minutes. The Prometheus plan wasn't just about winning this battle. It was about sending a message that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The Vorthen flagship, Supreme Dominance, was a kilometer-long monument to imperial power. Its shields could withstand the combined firepower of most planetary defense networks. Its weapons could crack continents. Its crew of 5,000 represented the finest military minds in Vorthen space. And it was about to become very confused. Santos Wolfpack reached the flagship's perimeter as planned. Instead of attacking the massive ship directly, they did something no enemy had ever attempted. They synchronized their Prometheus drives and performed a coordinated space fold. To observers, it appeared that 7 human destroyers had simply vanished. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, leaving no energy signature or debris. Inside the Supreme Dominance, alarms began blaring. "Report," demanded Fleet Admiral Kethvar, the Vorthen Empire's most decorated commander. "Sir, 7 enemy vessels have disappeared from our sensors. We're detecting massive space-time distortions around our position, but no ships." Kethvar's forearms gestured impatiently. Impossible. No species has full technology capable of that level of precision. Our own ships require massive generators and can only fold over interstellar distances. The tactical officer's voice rose in panic. Admiral, we're detecting new contacts. They're inside our defensive perimeter. Somehow the human ships bypassed our shields entirely. For the first time in his long military career, Fleet Admiral Kethvar felt something he had never experienced in combat: uncertainty. The 7 human ships materialized in perfect formation around the Vorthen flagship, their weapons already charging. But instead of firing, they transmitted a message on all frequencies. Vorthen Fleet Commander, came Admiral Chen's voice, broadcast from the Defiance to every ship in both fleets. You wanted to see what humanity was capable of. Congratulations. You're looking at 7 ships that just did something your empire considers impossible. They folded space with precision down to the meter, bypassed your shields as if they didn't exist, and are now in position to destroy your flagship. The silence that followed was absolute. Across the battlefield, combat gradually ceased as both fleets tried to process what they had witnessed. Chen's voice continued, calm and implacable. However, we're not going to destroy your ship. Instead, we're going to give you a choice. The same choice you've given so many others, with one small modification. Inside the Supreme Dominance, emergency meetings erupted as Vorthen commanders tried to understand how their technologically superior fleet had been outmaneuvered by primitive mammals. You can surrender your fleet and withdraw from human space permanently, Chen announced. Or you can discover what happens when you continue fighting a species that considers impossible just another word for challenge accepted. The message that followed was transmitted directly to Fleet Admiral Kethvar's personal communicator, bypassing all security protocols. Admiral Kethvar. Chen's voice was now speaking privately to the Vorthen commander. My intelligence reports tell me you're a practical leader, not a fanatic. You've seen what my ships can do. What I haven't shown you yet is what we're willing to do. A new display activated on the Supreme Dominance's main screen, showing data that made the bridge crew gasp in horror. It was a complete scan of every Vorthen ship in the fleet, shield frequencies, weapon loadouts, crew complements, even the location of individual officers. We've been studying your empire for longer than you know, Chen continued. Every tactic, every technology, every weakness. The question you need to ask yourself is simple. Do you want to be the admiral who brought the Vorthen Empire its first defeat? Or do you want to be the one who is smart enough to avoid a war you cannot win? Fleet Admiral Kethvar stared at the impossible data scrolling across his screen. The humans had intelligence that should have been impossible to obtain, technology that violated established laws of physics, and, apparently, the tactical flexibility to turn any situation to their advantage. For 3,000 years, the Vorthen Empire had expanded through superior force and intimidation. They had never faced an enemy that was genuinely prepared for them. As he considered his options, one thought echoed through Kethvar's mind, a phrase from the human transmission that his universal translator had rendered with ominous precision. Challenge accepted. For the first time since the Empire's founding, a Vorthen fleet admiral found himself wondering if perhaps they had finally encountered something they shouldn't have provoked. The battle was far from over, but already the galaxy was beginning to learn that humanity's understanding of warfare was very different from anything that had come before. Fleet Admiral Kethvar's forearms trembled slightly as he processed the implications of what he was seeing. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Vorthen Empire had never faced an enemy capable of this level of strategic deception. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered his fleet, they had apparently been planning this encounter for months, possibly years. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, voice tight with barely controlled fear. Our strategic analysis computers are recommending immediate withdrawal. The probability matrices are showing outcomes we've never seen before. Kethvar's compound eyes studied the tactical display where human ships continued their impossible dance around his fleet. Every few seconds, another group would vanish, and reappear elsewhere, always in a position of advantage. His ships, designed for overwhelming frontal assault, were being picked apart by an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving tactical data from our scouts in the outer system. There are additional human ships moving into position. Lots of them." The main display shifted to show the broader tactical picture, and what Kethvar saw made his blood run cold. The 100 ships they had been engaging were not the entire human fleet. They were merely the advance guard. Coming through the system's outer reaches were wave after wave of human vessels, thousands of them, all moving with the same impossible precision and coordination. Admiral Chen's voice crackled across the open channel again. "Fleet Admiral Kethvar, I hope you're studying the sensor data carefully. What you're looking at is approximately 15% of our available fleet strength. We thought it only fair to give you a chance to reconsider before we showed you what total war actually looks like." Inside the Defiance's bridge, Commander Harrison was coordinating the arrival of the main fleet elements. "Admiral, the 2nd and 3rd battle groups have completed their approach. The 4th and 5th are entering the system now. Total count is approaching 4,000 ships." Chen nodded approvingly. The Prometheus plan had always been about more than just winning a single battle. It was about demonstrating to the galaxy that humanity was not another species to be conquered, but a force that could reshape the balance of power entirely. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Begin Phase 4. I want a full technological demonstration." What followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The human fleet began displaying capabilities that violated every known law of space warfare. Ships phased through solid matter, weapons bent around shields to strike targets from impossible angles, and entire squadrons seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Captain Vextar of the Bloodclaw watched in horror as a human battlecruiser approached his position. He ordered maximum firepower concentrated on the approaching ship, and his crew complied, unleashing enough energy to vaporize a small moon. The human ship absorbed the entire barrage without apparent damage, its hull seeming to redirect the energy into some kind of collection system. "Impossible, Vextar muttered. No species has armor capable of that level of energy absorption." His science officer looked up from her instruments, all 4 eyes wide with shock. "Captain, that wasn't armor. The humans somehow converted our weapons' energy into fuel for their own systems. Our attacks are making them stronger." Across the battlefield, similar impossibilities were being revealed. Human ships were demonstrating technologies that shouldn't have existed for another 1,000 years of development. More disturbing still, they were using these technologies with the casual efficiency of tools they had possessed for generations. Fleet Admiral Kethvar watched his fleet's morale collapse in real time. Vorthan warriors, trained from birth to believe in their technological and tactical superiority, were discovering that everything they thought they knew about warfare was obsolete. "All ships," he commanded through gritted teeth, "implement Doctrine 12. Full tactical withdrawal to defensive formation Omega." It was a maneuver the Vorthan Empire had never been forced to use in actual combat, a fighting retreat designed to minimize casualties when facing overwhelming odds. The fact that he was ordering it against a supposedly primitive species would have been unthinkable 12 hours earlier. Admiral Chun observed the Vorthan withdrawal with professional interest. "They're adapting faster than our psychological profiles predicted. That's actually impressive. Commander Harrison, what's the status on our intelligence penetration?" Harrison smiled grimly. "Complete, Admiral. We've been inside their communications network since they entered the system. Every order, every tactical discussion, every private communication between ships. They don't know it yet, but we've been anticipating their moves before they make them." The intelligence breakthrough had been humanity's greatest achievement in preparing for this confrontation. Using a combination of advanced AI and quantum computing, human strategists had managed to crack the Vorthan military encryption protocols and insert monitoring programs into their fleet's communication system. The Vorthins weren't just fighting humans. They were fighting an enemy that knew their every plan before it was implemented. Admiral Rodriguez reported from communications, "We're intercepting Vorthin transmissions. Fleet Admiral Kethvar is requesting emergency reinforcements from their nearest battle group. He's also sending detailed reports about our capabilities back to Vorthin High Command." Chun considered this development. The Prometheus plan had anticipated that the Vorthins would eventually call for help, but she had hoped to finish this engagement before reinforcements could arrive. Now it appeared they would need to accelerate their timeline. "How long before those reinforcements arrive?" she asked. Harrison consulted his tactical computer. "Best estimate is 6 hours for the nearest Vorthin fleet, assuming they drop everything and come at maximum speed. Then we have 6 hours to finish this and prepare for round 2. Commander, signal all ships. Implement the endgame protocol." The endgame protocol was the final phase of the Prometheus plan and the most dangerous. It required human ships to demonstrate not just superior technology, but superior will. What Chun was about to order would either end the battle decisively or escalate it to a level where neither side could afford to lose. "All fleet elements," she broadcast, "this is Admiral Chun. Execute Operation Checkmate. Authorization Prometheus Omega Final." Throughout the human fleet, crews that had been holding back their most devastating capabilities finally unleashed them. The space around the Vorthin fleet erupted in displays of power that redefined what the galaxy considered possible. Captain Santos, still leading her wolf pack around the Vorthin flagship, received the checkmate order with grim satisfaction. Her ships had been waiting for this moment, the chance to show the Vorthins what happened when humans decided to stop playing games. "Venganza to all wolf pack units," she transmitted. "Target the flagship's command structure. Let's give them a lesson in precision warfare." What followed was a demonstration of surgical accuracy that left Vorthin observers speechless. Instead of attempting to destroy the supreme dominance, Santos ships began systematically disabling specific systems. Communication arrays vanished in precisely controlled explosions. Weapons turrets were severed from their mountings without damaging the surrounding hull. Shield generators were overloaded with pinpoint accuracy. Inside the flagship, chaos erupted as system after system went offline. But the human attacks were so precise that life support, artificial gravity, and other essential systems remained completely functional. The message was clear. The humans could have killed everyone aboard the ship, but chose not to. Fleet Admiral Kethvar stared at his command displays as his flagship was systematically rendered helpless. The humans weren't just demonstrating superior technology. They were showing a level of tactical control that suggested they could end the battle at any moment they chose. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Admiral Chun is requesting a private conference." Kethvar's tactical training warred with his growing realization that continued resistance was pointless. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that made Vorthin military doctrine obsolete. More importantly, they had shown restraint that suggested they might be willing to negotiate rather than simply destroy his entire fleet. "Accept the transmission," he ordered. "Route it to my private quarters." Admiral Chen's image appeared on the secure display, and Kethvar found himself studying the human commander with new respect. She didn't look like a warrior in the Vorthin tradition. No scars, no cybernetic enhancements, no visible weapons. Yet she had just orchestrated the most devastating military defeat in Vorthin history. "Fleet Admiral Kethvar," Chen began without preamble, "I believe it's time we had an honest conversation. Your empire has spent 3,000 years conquering species that couldn't effectively resist you. That's about to change." Kethvar's translator struggled with some of the human emotional nuances, but the meaning was clear. "What do you want?" he asked simply. "I want you to deliver a message to your high command," Chen replied. "Humanity is formally withdrawing from consideration as a target for conquest. We're also serving notice that any Vorthin military action against our allies or trade partners will be considered an act of aggression against Earth." The implications hit Kethvar immediately. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were claiming a sphere of influence that would directly challenge Vorthan expansion. Your High Command has two choices, Chen continued. They can accept humanity as an equal partner in galactic affairs, or they can discover what happens when they try to continue business as usual against an opponent that refuses to be intimidated. Kethvar studied the human admiral's expression, searching for signs of bluff or weakness. He found neither. And if we choose to fight, Chen's smile was cold and professional. Then you'll learn why humans have a saying. You can't defeat someone who refuses to lose. We've been fighting wars since before we discovered fire, Admiral. We've had practice. The transmission continued for several minutes as Chun outlined terms that were more generous than Kethvar had expected. The humans weren't demanding tribute or territory. They wanted recognition as equals and assurance that certain species under their protection would be left alone. It was diplomacy backed by overwhelming force, and it was something the Vorthan Empire had never encountered from a position of weakness. When a conversation ended, Kethvar found himself facing the most difficult decision of his career. He could continue the battle and almost certainly face complete destruction, or he could recommend that his empire negotiate with humans as equals for the first time in 3 millennia. His decision was made easier by the arrival of new intelligence from his scouts. The human reinforcements were not the disorganized refugee fleet he had expected. They were arriving in perfect formation, with technology that made even the advance guard look primitive by comparison. Communications, he ordered, prepare a message for High Command. Priority Omega classification. As he began composing what would become one of the most important communications in Vorthan history, Fleet Admiral Kethvar realized that the galaxy's balance of power had shifted permanently in the space of a few hours. The humans had not just won a battle. They had announced the arrival of a new major power. The message he sent would reach Vorthan High Command within hours, carrying news that would shake the Empire to its foundations. The age of easy conquest was over, and humanity was the reason why. Meanwhile, Admiral Chun watched the Vorthan fleet's continuing withdrawal with satisfaction. Phase 5 of the Prometheus plan was already beginning. The diplomatic phase where humanity would offer the galaxy an alternative to Vorthan domination. But first, they needed to prepare for the possibility that the Vorthan Empire would choose war over negotiation. Because if there was one thing humans excelled at more than any other species in the galaxy, it was being ready for whatever came next. The Vorthan High Command's emergency session convened within hours of receiving Fleet Admiral Kethvar's report. In the obsidian towers of the Imperial capital on Vorth Prime, the Empire's most senior military and political leaders gathered to discuss something that had never happened before: military defeat at the hands of a supposedly primitive species. Supreme Commander Vashtar, leader of all Vorthan military forces, read Kethvar's report for the third time, his 4 eyes scanning the impossible tactical data. This cannot be accurate, he declared to the assembled council. No species develops such technology in isolation. The humans must have received aid from an advanced civilization. Intelligence Director Morthak consulted her data tablets, each displaying information that contradicted 3 millennia of Vorthan assumptions about galactic development. Our deep space reconnaissance confirms that humanity has had no contact with any major galactic power until recently. Their technological advancement appears to be entirely indigenous. The silence that followed was unprecedented. The Vorthan Empire's expansion had been built on the assumption that they possessed the galaxy's most advanced military technology. If humans had independently developed superior capabilities, it raised disturbing questions about Vorthan dominance. Show them the combat recordings, ordered Emperor Kelvashtar, the supreme ruler of the Vorthan Empire. His ancient form, enhanced by cybernetic implants that extended his life far beyond natural limits, dominated the council chamber. The holographic display activated, showing selected moments from the battle. Vorthan commanders watched in stunned silence as human ships performed maneuvers that violated everything they understood about space combat. energy weapons that bent around shields, ships that existed in multiple locations simultaneously, and tactical coordination that suggested a level of consciousness networking beyond anything they had encountered. Analysis, the Emperor commanded. Supreme Commander Vashtar gestured to the tactical displays. The humans appear to have mastered technologies our science division considers theoretical at best. Their space-folding capabilities exceed our own by orders of magnitude. Their weapons technology specifically counters our defensive systems. Most disturbing of all, their fleet coordination suggests a command and control system more advanced than our own. Emperor Kelvashtar's mechanical eyes focused on the strategic implications. For 3,000 years, the Vorthan Empire had expanded by identifying weaker civilizations and conquering them before they could develop effective resistance. Humanity represented something new, a species that had developed superior military capabilities while remaining hidden from galactic attention. Recommendations? He asked. The Council exchanged uncertain glances. Military advisors who had spent their entire careers planning conquests found themselves contemplating the unthinkable, negotiating from a position of weakness. Intelligence Director Morthak spoke first. We have 3 options. First, we can attempt to overwhelm humanity with our full military might, accepting massive casualties, but potentially maintaining imperial dominance. Second, we can negotiate a peace treaty that recognizes human territorial claims while preserving the Empire's core holdings. Third, we can study human technology and attempt to develop countermeasures before resuming hostilities. Fourth option, interrupted General Hexmar, the Empire's most aggressive military commander. We can demonstrate that the Empire does not negotiate with upstarts by destroying Earth itself. A few planet killer weapons would send a clear message to any other species considering resistance. The Emperor's cybernetic implants hummed as he processed the strategic calculations. The fourth option appealed to his instincts. The Vorthan Empire had maintained order through fear, and showing weakness now might encourage other species to rebel. But Kethvar's report suggested that humanity possessed defensive capabilities that made even planet-killer attacks questionable. What do we know about human defensive preparations? He asked. Morthak consulted her intelligence files. Very little, unfortunately. Their homeworld appears to be defended by orbital installations we cannot properly scan. Our long-range surveillance indicates massive construction projects throughout their star system, but our sensors cannot penetrate whatever stealth technology they're using. The tactical implications were disturbing. If humans had developed defensive systems as advanced as their offensive capabilities, a direct assault on Earth might result in the destruction of entire Vorthan fleets. Meanwhile, in human space, Admiral Chun was receiving her own intelligence reports about Vorthan preparations. The Empire was mobilizing additional fleets, but there were signs that their leadership was divided about how to respond to humanity's demonstration of power. Admiral, Commander Harrison reported, our deep space monitoring stations are tracking massive Vorthan fleet movements. It looks like they're pulling ships from 3 different sectors to assemble a strike force. Chin studied the tactical displays from her command center on Luna Station, Earth's primary military facility. The Prometheus plan had anticipated this development, but she had hoped the Vorthans would choose negotiation over escalation. How many ships are they assembling? She asked. Conservative estimate is 1,500 vessels, including at least 12 of their Emperor-class dreadnoughts. It's the largest military force they've deployed in over 500 years. Chen nodded grimly. The Vorthans were clearly taking humanity seriously, which was both encouraging and terrifying. A force of that size could devastate entire star systems, but it also represented a significant portion of the Empire's total military strength. Signal the Defense Council, she ordered. It's time to implement the Terra Protocol. The Terra Protocol was humanity's ultimate defensive plan, developed during the frantic months after first contact with Vorthan scouts. It assumed that diplomatic solutions would fail and that Earth would face an invasion force designed to utterly destroy human civilization. What the Vorthens didn't know was that humanity's defensive preparations went far beyond traditional military thinking. Human strategists had studied every recorded Vorthen conquest and identified patterns that could be exploited. More importantly, they had developed tactics specifically designed to turn the Empire's greatest strength, overwhelming force, into a liability. Within hours of the Terra Protocol activation, the entire Sol system began transforming into what military historians would later call the galaxy's most sophisticated defensive network. Orbital platforms that had appeared to be civilian construction projects revealed their true nature as weapons systems capable of channeling Earth's entire energy output into focused defensive beams. Captain Santos, recently promoted after her performance in the first engagement, received command of the Sol Defense Force's mobile strike units. Her mission was to demonstrate to the approaching Vorthen fleet that humanity's home system was not another helpless target waiting to be conquered. All squadron commanders, she broadcast from her new flagship, the UES Retribution, remember what we learned about Vorthen tactics. They'll come in hard and fast, expecting to overwhelm us with superior numbers. Our job is to teach them that sometimes bigger isn't better. The Retribution and her sister ships represented humanity's latest technological achievements. Unlike the vessels used in the first engagement, these ships were designed specifically for defensive operations in the Sol system. They could operate within Earth's gravity well, use the planet's magnetic field to enhance their weapons, and coordinate with the massive orbital defense platforms to create overlapping fields of fire. As the Vorthen fleet approached the edge of the system, both sides prepared for what would either be humanity's last stand or the beginning of a new galactic order. Emperor Kelvashtar had personally assumed command of the Vorthen assault force, bringing with him the Empire's most advanced flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The kilometer-and-a-half-long vessel contained weapons capable of sterilizing planets and defensive systems that had never been penetrated. Communications, he ordered, transmit the final ultimatum to Earth. The message that reached Earth was simple and brutal: surrender unconditionally within 1 hour, or face complete annihilation. It was the same ultimatum the Empire had delivered to hundreds of worlds over 3 millennia, and it had never been refused twice. Admiral Chun received the ultimatum while standing in the command center that would coordinate humanity's defense. Around her, displays showed defensive preparations that represented the combined effort of every human on Earth and in the colonies. Scientists, engineers, military personnel, and civilian volunteers had worked together to create something the galaxy had never seen, a species preparing to fight with everything they possessed. Admiral, President Martinez said from his secure bunker, "You have full authorization to respond as you see fit." The Security Council's vote was unanimous. Humanity stands together. Chen nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her next words would be heard not just by human forces, but by the Vorthen fleet and monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. This is Admiral Sarah Chun, speaking for the United Earth Defense Force and all of humanity. To the Vorthen Empire, we offer this response to your ultimatum. Earth does not surrender. Earth does not kneel. Earth fights. She paused, knowing that her next words would be remembered for centuries. You came here expecting to find another helpless world waiting for conquest. Instead, you found something your empire has never encountered, a species that considers impossible odds an invitation to get creative. The Vorthen fleet was now entering the outer system, their massive ships beginning to accelerate toward Earth. Their formation was perfect, their weapons charged, their confidence restored by overwhelming numerical superiority. 3,000 years ago, Chun continued, your empire began expanding by conquering those who couldn't fight back. Today, you discover what happens when you threaten something that can fight back, will fight back, and refuses to lose. What followed was the most devastating military engagement in galactic history. The Vorthen fleet encountered defensive systems that defied every tactical assumption they possessed. Earth's orbital platforms didn't just return fire, They turned the entire space around the planet into a network of interlocking energy fields that could redirect and amplify weapons fire. Human ships didn't just defend static positions. They used Earth's gravity well and magnetic field to perform maneuvers that made their previous demonstrations look simple. Vorthan vessels found themselves fighting an enemy that could literally use a planet as a weapon. But the most shocking development was humanity's use of what their military called distributed consciousness warfare. Every human ship, platform, and defensive installation was networked together into a single tactical entity that could process information and respond to threats faster than any individual commander. Emperor Kelvashtar watched in growing horror as his overwhelming force was systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to anticipate every move before it was made. His ships were being destroyed not through superior firepower, but through tactical coordination that bordered on precognition. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his tactical staff. "Sir," his science officer reported, "the humans appear to have networked their entire defensive force into a single command entity. Every ship is sharing sensor data, tactical analysis, and targeting information in real time. They're not fighting as individual vessels. They're fighting as a single organism." The implications were staggering. The Vorthan Empire's military doctrine was based on hierarchical command structures where orders flowed down from superior officers to subordinate units. They had never faced an enemy where every unit could instantly access the collective knowledge and decision-making capability of the entire force. As his fleet continued to suffer impossible losses, Emperor Kelvashtar finally understood what humanity had been trying to tell them. This wasn't just another species defending their homeworld. This was evolution in action, a form of warfare so advanced that it made traditional military thinking obsolete. The battle ended not with humanity's surrender, but with the Emperor's personal retreat. The Eternal Dominion, damaged but not destroyed, withdrew from the Sol system carrying news that would shake the foundations of the Vorthan Empire. For the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy's greatest military power had been decisively defeated. More importantly, they had been defeated by a species that offered an alternative to conquest, cooperation between equals in a galaxy where strength came not from domination, but from unity. Admiral Chen's final message to the retreating Vorthan fleet would become legendary throughout known space. "The galaxy is big enough for all of us, but it's not big enough for empires that think might makes right. Choose wisely." The age of Vorthan expansion was over. The age of human influence had begun, and across the galaxy, countless species that had lived in fear of imperial conquest began to hope that perhaps the universe might have room for something better than perpetual war. In the end, humanity hadn't just defended their homeworld. They had defended the very idea that civilized beings could find better solutions than violence and domination. It was the most human victory possible, winning not just the battle, but the moral authority to lead by example rather than force. The war was over. The real work of building a better galaxy was just beginning.